welcome to the Art of Being Human. We are in the middle of a very serious pandemic. I don't know in history if any pandemic has been worse than this. I've read not so, but at the same time we are losing a lot of people sick, a lot of people dying and so forth, and a lot of mental health issues are creeping up as a result of it. A lot of suicides, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. So I've gone back to discuss these issues so that you'll understand them, and if you're caught up with anxiety and depression, so you'll be able to help yourself a little and know what's going on and not feel guilty because you feel this way. You know, one of the worst things about being depressed is people who say, have a stiff upper lip, just hang on, things will be all right. You can change things. And the fact is, a person that's seriously depressed can't get rid of it by thinking it away. It just does not work that way. And then they feel guilty because they can't do what everybody expects them to do. Everybody expects them to be able to think it away. You don't have to be depressed. You can think of this, you can think of that. But the whole thing affects the body. The mind and the body and the spirit, they all act as one. What affects one affects the other. So it's important that we go back to basics and learn about what happens to the body under stress and how do you help yourself. Do you need to have therapy? Now, the things that I'm going to be talking about in the next few weeks, it's going to take a few weeks to get through this because I want to get through anxiety, depression, suicidology, grief and bereavement. I mean, that's a lot of things to tackle. And the thing is, we're dealing with all of those things, so they need to be tackled. It's not like I just picked up something and say, well, let's talk for this for a while, or let's talk about that for a while. There's a pattern in terms of what I'm doing. I want to get into stress. I want to get into trauma, what it is, how to handle it, what you can do to help yourself, when you need to get help. And then you probably do need to get help. If you find yourself stuck in an emotional reaction and you can't seem to get out of it, then you need to get help with it. I know television can be a help, it really can. Sometimes it puts an edge on things so you can look at things a little bit differently. But if you're stuck in something, you need to get help with it. And there are a lot of people that are stuck because this pandemic has been going on for about a year now, maybe a little longer, and seems to be getting worse instead of better. But I'm not thinking that it's going to continue to be worse. There's a vaccine out. People are starting to get inoculated, and I think that it can be licked. But if people don't follow the rules and they're careless, then of course it's going to stay around longer. You know, you don't tell a person who's got pneumonia, let's go for a long walk and sneeze in everybody's face and don't wear masks and things like that. There are things you have to do to help prevent it. But the vaccine is here. There's more than one vaccine that's here. And as a result of that, I think we stand a pretty good chance to getting back to normal, but I think it's going to take a few months to do it. But in the meantime, people are suffering. They're suffering from anxiety, they're suffering from depression, they're suffering from grief, they're suffering from bereavement, you know, and some people are actually suicidal. They're thinking about getting rid of themselves, which is absolutely the wrong thing to do. And so I want to discuss all of these issues basically to help people who are stuck in a rut. They're stuck in a rut because of what's going on. And the thing is, it's not their fault. If you are having mental health issues, it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. Don't feel guilty because you can't think it away. This is a time for you to get help. This is a time for us to support one another, not judge one another. And there's so much happening politically, so much that's happening in every way in society. So we need to get back to the basics and talk about basic mental health issues. And I've been doing this. I started doing this like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to continue with it. And hopefully it'll help somebody. Now, I don't I don't discuss personal issues on the air. If you have any questions and you want to email me, I'll do my best to answer your questions on the air. That's if you have any questions at all. Sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. So at any rate, we want to start about the stress and distress. It can be caused by things that are not related to events. We have to remember that if you're very anxious and you're very depressed, there may be purely psychological, biological reasons why this is happening. It's not always caused by an event. Now, there's lots of events going on in society that could cause a person to feel that way. But we also have to remember that the human body can also contribute to the way that we feel. If your hormones are out of balance, if your brain chemistry is not quite on target, you can get a lot of emotional symptoms, but they're caused from a physical cause, not due to what's going on, usually not due to what's going on around you. But at the same time, a lot of things that are going on around you could make your physical symptoms worse because of the fact of the stress of it all. So just remember that if you are having a problem with depression, anxiety, grief, all of these things that I've mentioned, it may be not so much because of something that's going on around you, but something that's happening within you, something that's happening in terms of your hormones, your body chemistry, and also it could be caused by stress. Biochemistry is, if it's not balanced, can cause you to have illnesses. It can cause you to be depressed. It can cause you to be very nervous. Even some medications can do it. So if you're taking medications and you're curious about it and you're not feeling right, find out what the side effects of the medications are. They may have partly to do with how you're feeling. Otherwise, you may be able to pinpoint it. You know, when things are going wrong in society, and we're having a lot of that now, you know, people losing jobs and so forth, it's pretty easy to say that I'm nervous because this happened, I'm nervous because of that. You know, you can pinpoint that fairly easily, but sometimes you can't. There is such a thing as anticipatory anxiety, and I think a lot of people who are anxious are having anticipatory anxiety. And anticipatory anxiety is when you are nervous about something that could happen. It may not happen yet. It hasn't happened yet, but the fact of the matter is it could happen. It's not something that you're afraid of because you just read about it. It's not something that you're afraid of that you're kind of concocting in your mind. It's a real situation that you may be involved with that could go south on you, and it could go south rapidly, and you're nervous about it. And that's what anticipatory anxiety is, and you should be aware of that. So you may be fearful of the future. What's going to happen to your job? Are you going to be able to keep your house? Are you going to be able to pay your bills? Are you going to be able to keep up all those credit card payments? Are you going to be able to have a normal life? You know, we may have to structure, some people may have to structure what's normal. What's normal for us now may not be what's normal for us in another month or so. But I think we're going to get back to more semblance of what normal is before the pandemic hit, when enough people get vaccinated and when you have the herd immunity. I think we can get back there, but I don't think we'll ever get back totally to the way life was. I think people are always going to be kind of looking for the next shoe to drop because the changes that have happened so rapidly. But remember, there are different causes of people to be distressed. One of them is the fact of what's going on internally with you that's attributable to your biological or your hormonal level, your brain chemistry. That's one cause. Another cause is going to be external. It's going to be what's happening to you in society. Maybe your job is going to be on the line because they're downsizing. Maybe the store that you run is going to have to close because of the pandemic. You know, so that's also in the realm of it could happen, maybe it won't, maybe it hasn't, but it could happen. The other thing you need to remember is that your perceptions may not be completely accurate. We get fearful because our imaginations take wings and we think of the worst. And whatever you are feeding your brain accepts as being truth. If I go to the store and say, I know I'm going to be hit by a car, I mean, this is way out. I mean, it's not even logical. But if I tell myself, I know I'm going to be hit by a car as I'm going to the store, the traffic is terrible, then my brain is going to say, you've been hit by a car, and it's going to believe it. And I'm going to get all the emotions that are associated with that. Oh my goodness, I'm nervous. I don't dare to cross the street. I might get hit. You know, you tell your brain something, and that becomes truth for your brain. I know I'm going to flunk this test. Well, maybe you won't, maybe you will. But your brain has accepted the fact that you're flunking the test. Why? Because you just told it. You know, this is such a thing is the way that you speak. You know, the Bible says life and death is in the power of the tongue. And it's so true. If you're going to speak all of these awful things that you think are going to happen to you, your brain is going to accept that it's happened to you. That becomes your new reality. Your new reality is what you're going to believe. And you're going to believe if you're thinking it. So you need to change your thinking. Your thinking needs to be positive, much more positive. Yes, I may lose my job, but there's an awfully good chance that I won't. So you have to hedge. You have to tell yourself positive things. Now, I'm not one of these people that just preaches positivity because I think that they make a big mistake. Sometimes I don't even think they are realistic. We have to be realistic. There are things going on in society. Things might happen that might hurt us. Things might happen that might not be helpful to us, but they also might not. So we have to kind of hedge. Yes, these are possibilities. Yes, I could get hit when crossing the street. Yes, I could fail a test, but that doesn't mean I will. So you have to reserve that positivity as well as being accurate, as well as being realistic with what is actually going on. So let's look at the emotions for a minute. Your emotions are not just feelings, they're states of being. And when I say that, I mean that your physical body reacts to what your emotions are. If you're overjoyed about something, if you're sad about something, if you're angry about something, you know, and you're depressed about something, your body is going to react to that because your body and your mind act as one. So what are the emotions that you might have? Well, I've listed them, and there's probably more than what I'm listing, but what are the common emotions? Well, depression, anger, aggression, rage, hate, fear, anxiety, guilt, remorse, shame, and worry. Now that's quite a list, but it's probably not even a complete list. It's what I happen to think of at the moment. And with the exception of depression and grief, most of the emotions are going to cause your body to react in a typical way for emotions. Now remember, emotions aren't negative or positive. They're not bad or good. You can't assign to them some kind of a value, but there are some that are much more comfortable to live with than others, but they are states of being. They cause your body to react in a certain way. And what way is that? Well, with most emotions, with the exception of depression and grief, you'll have increased heart rate. You'll have faster breathing. Your stomach will be tighter, and you can sometimes feel that. Your stomach doesn't feel right. Increased, hormones are released, so you get the effects of the hormones that are being released. You can be excited. You can be nervous. Supposing you have to move in order to keep a job, how do you feel? Well, you might feel excited because it's a new beginning, and you're happy about that, but you might feel sad because you don't want to leave your friends, and you don't want to leave what's comfortable in your life because you've built up your life. So it's a big change coming. How do you react? Well, for a few minutes, yeah, this is good. I get a new change. No, this isn't good. I don't want to leave what I already have. And I don't know what the future holds. Who knows what the future holds? You know, you just don't. So at any rate, so you have both of those emotions, and they can occur almost at the same time, from one to the other, from one to the other. Rapidly they can change. And that's perfectly normal for a person to experience that. Now, we don't like to experience these emotions, and so what we do is we try to stop them. How do we stop them? Well, we sometimes try to get help with it. We sometimes take medications, we take pills, we buy stuff in the drugstore, and we try to control our emotions. It will help you a lot to realize that if you're feeling emotional about something, your body is trying to tell you something. And if you can accept that as a normal response of your body to a situation and not look at it as if it's an illness. See, sometimes we look at things like they're illnesses when they're normal reactions, and we shouldn't do that. There is a book out, a new book called The Body Keeps the Score. And I've been reading it. I like it very much. A friend of mine gave it to me and said it transformed his life. It gives us a new way of thinking about trauma, of thinking about emotions, about thinking about anxiety. The body is trying to tell us something, and if we can recognize that and we can accommodate that, then a lot of the sting of the emotions goes away. I know my mother used to say, and she was right, if you just accept and acknowledge what you're feeling, then the intensity of those feelings go down. They're not so hard to deal with because you are acknowledging them. When do we feel the worst panic, or when do you feel the worst anxiety? It's when you're trying not to feel it. If you get up in the morning, I'm not going to be nervous today, I'm not going to be anxious today, I'm not going to be fearful today, I'm not. What's the first thing that happens? You're fearful. And you can't stop it. And then you feel guilty because you can't stop it. What's the matter with me? I should be able to stop it. I say no to all of these things, and I'm still having it, but you're not handling it the right way. If you acknowledge, this may be a difficult day for me, I've just gone through an extreme loss, this may be a hard day, that's okay. That's part of the way that my body will naturally react to a loss. And then you see, you take the sting out of it. A lot of the emotions we have is the body trying to get us to acknowledge what we're feeling, but we can't acknowledge it or don't want to acknowledge it because somehow we feel like we're failures. I'm a failure if I'm afraid. No, you're not. You're just a human being who has the emotion of fear for a while, and then that will dissipate after a while. What's one of the things that you can do if you're afraid of something, or if you're in trauma and you're getting an emotional response to something that you're thinking about for a while? Think about something else. One of the techniques to control anxiety is when you're feeling anxious about something. Supposing you were divorced, but you're still having a hard time with that. Supposing your husband or your wife, whichever, was abusive, and you're getting calls from them, and it's just being a royal pain for you, and it's hard to handle it, and you're afraid of what's going to happen next. So you wake up and you think about it, and you're in a state of fear. Take something and think about something else for a while. It can be anything, and it's going to drop the anxiety for what you're afraid of. You have to be able to kind of split your attention and think of something else. Now, for an example, this is an example that I thought of last night. I was in an elevator with a friend of mine. We all knew each other. There were several of us in the elevator. And there's one person who was afraid of an elevator, really afraid. And she was starting to get very anxious about being in the elevator. Somebody took out a penny, just a penny, and said, "Hey, look at this penny, okay? What do you see?" "Well, you see the little face. Describe the penny." Well, before you know it, she was so concentrating on the penny, she forgot her fear. We went to the floor we needed. We all came out. She was fine. They put the penny away. So you see, what she did was someone was wise enough in our group to say, look at something else for a while. Focus on something else for a while. What you're going to find is that it's not going to be as hard as you think, and then you're going to come back and you don't feel the anxiety as you did before. Now, there are healing methods, and I may get into them as time goes on, or I'll at least mention them. I'm not going to teach you how to use them because you need to go to a therapist who's trained in these methods and they can help you. But if you're having anxiety over something that seems to come back over and over and over again, you're reliving your past pain, and that can go on for years. And that's also partly a brain function. The way that your brain is working, you have the frontal part, and I'm going to be showing you some diagrams as we go along. You have a frontal part, a frontal lobe, a prefrontal cortex, and you think and you reason and you do normal things with that. But in the back of the brain, there's a little section of it called the amygdala, and that's a primitive part of the brain. It stores emotions, it stores feelings, it stores anxiety. So supposing you were in a kind of an accident and you just barely escaped with your life and you're nervous about it, well, when you think about it, you think about the events, but you also re-experience the emotions that you had at the time and the emotions that you had just after a time. That part of the brain in the limbic system got activated, so you not only think of the event as a thing that happened, thinking of it intellectually, this happened and this happened and this happened, but you also relive all of the emotions that occurred in and around it, because that section of the primitive brain was stimulated and it released all of the memories. So you get caught in this treadmill kind of thing. You think about something that's bothersome, and then you get your emotions just go all over the place. You're just as emotional as you were when it happened and all of that. That's due to the amygdala. There are ways of taming that down, and as we go along, I'm going to probably mention this more and more. You may need to seek therapy, but once you learn how to do some skills, it will help you. And so I don't have a whole lot of time left, but I will mention one thing. You can put worry time, schedule a worry time. I've mentioned this before. And when you start to worry about something, take your mind off from it and think about something else and tell yourself, I can't worry about it now. This is not my worry time. I've preserved 8 to 8:30 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays as my worry time. I have to put off my worry till then. Think about something else. It'll take the anxiety down. Then when you get to your worry time, you may not be able to worry, and you're learning to gain control over the anxiety that besets you so much. So there are things that you can do, and there's always help available. And we're going to get into tension and nervousness, anxiety, what is it, how to cope with it, and then also what you can do to help yourself when you need to see a therapist. I can't do therapy on television, that's not my role, but I can teach about situations so you get a good head start in the right direction, and so you know pretty much what's going on with you, and it'll help you to cope. Knowing what's happening in your body, knowing what's happening in your mind helps you to cope. Now, why should I go through all of this? Because people who are suffering now are probably partly reliving the things that happened to them in the past. This pandemic, as bad as it is, not only makes people nervous, but the thing is, it may reactivate some things that people have been suffering in the past that have not been fully resolved. So those things come back to the fore as well. So you have a double whammy, what you're afraid of now, and also reflecting on what you were afraid of years ago that never really did get resolved. One enhances the other, and it makes it difficult to cope with. So I'm going to close it here. We'll continue with this for as long as necessary, and hopefully it'll give people some help that they need. So I'm going to close it here. Please join me next time.